All right, we are a work in progress. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do it again. All right, welcome. Here we are today with Igneus Live with Renaldo Ricketts. We are streaming live on Facebook, Igneus Press, also on YouTube, Igneus Press, and also on Twitch TV, Igneus Press. And after our session today, we will, this will be recorded and archived on each of those platforms and then spread all over the internet, which I know Renaldo is really good at. I've never seen so many shared. I've never seen so many. What did you say?
I'm trying to overcome my shyness.
Yeah. So Renaldo, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be with Beers' daughter.
Okay, so let's explain for the audience who Bear is.
If somebody don't know who Beer is Peter Kidd, Safia's father. The founder of Igneus Press.
That's right. Who passed away earlier last year on June 12th, just a week after his birthday. And I wish he could be here today. He'd be so happy to see you speaking about your work, your artwork, and your poetry, and your activism, and just bringing, as Dad would say, your big fat soul onto the onto the scene for us all to behold. So,
yeah, for those that never met him, one of the finest human beings ever.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about Beer, I call him Beer. One of the things I really liked about Beer is that he will stand up for his belief, his convictions. I've seen him, in the room many times defend me in spite of all the other people that were there, and he will just stand up for what's right. And that to me meant a lot.
Can you give us an example?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, as you know, the room, the author's lounge, was a place full of egos. I mean, writers, artists, and it was like explosive. And Beers, I won't say his job, but his role was like a mediator. And he was like the cohesive force that kept heads still and kept people in line in his own way. I mean, he had a way with people that were wild. I mean, he was a friend of Abby Hoffman. You can't get any. I mean, the radical of the '60s, Abby Hoffman, and Bob Kaufman. And Bob was, I think Beer's job actually was to, all the places that Bob Kaufman was 86 of, it looked like his job was to go back in and soft sell Bob into all these establishments that he was 86 out of. he had that gift. And he must have been good to deal with Abby Hoffman and Bob Kaufman. Well, these guys were like genius renegades. And that was just his ability, his ability to soft sell people in that were just like excluded. I mean, he had that ability to let's say, to soften the blow.
It's true. Dad was a super inclusive human being.
That made it possible for these guys to actually perform what they wanted.
Yeah.
Because it was just like one of my favorite stories is that when they went to Keystone Corner, people are not familiar. It was a jazz place in San Francisco, and around the country. I found out there were Keystone Corners all over the place. And Beer shows up with Bob Kaufman, and these guys look like two hippies out of the '60s. And the management looked at them and they sent somebody to throw them out. Bob says, I'm here to see Horace Silver. I know Horace Silver. Like, yeah, right. So they call Horace Silver. Horace comes in and sits them out in the front seat, whatever you want to. I mean, they're about to just get blasted out of this business, and it just shows you the Bear he had this soft touch.
Yeah.
I mean, it was never even people that wrote mediocre poetry. He was never blatantly. I mean, he was honest, but he was never blatant. He was more like he had the soft sell approach.
That's very true. That's very
which was
true.
good. I mean, that's one of the reasons that his role was so vital and important in the Room Authors Lounge.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we all met one day in New York for 2 days. That was just like outrageous.
Yeah. For those who are just joining us, Renaldo Ricketts is here with us today on Igneus Live, and
here is Michelle Abrahams.
And Renaldo is talking about Peter Kidd, the founding publisher of Igneus Press, and telling some of the anecdotes that my father, Peter Kidd, used to love to tell about Bob Kaufman and the 1970s San Francisco poetry scene. So it's very kind of you to share some of your time here talking with us, talking about Dad. But I would love to get to you because you're what I'm super interested in right now, and I cherish this opportunity to talk with you today about your artwork and your poetry and then your activism, because
definitely.
being a multidisciplinary.
Michelle Abrahams.
What's that?
This is my cousin. We have a person that just joined us.
Michelle Abrahams is your cousin?
Right. Yes, my cousin.
Ah, very cool. Welcome, Michelle.
As a matter of fact, Michelle flies to China. Was flying to China from time to time.
Oh.
American Airlines. She knows it well.
Well, we gotta be in touch. I gotta hear some of her China knowledge.
Right. For people that don't know about Michelle, I think I told Michelle that Sophia lived and worked in China. Teaches Chinese literature.
Yep. I teach Chinese culture to Chinese people. What is the world coming to? Oh, it's a real in-joke with me and my students. They love it.
Let's get. I guess we can get started by just me saying how I got interested in art. I mean, art is something that's been around, let's say, for probably millions of years, and I see art as it's actually the first form of communication that existed with humans. Is that art existed before language, because it was probably there was no language. Beginning, there was no language. There were probably grunts, and it was probably easier to just draw something and communicate the idea. They said a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, back then it was worth millions of words because there was no language. So from art, people were able to communicate, and then from there, language probably developed from art. So the first form of human expression and communication was probably art.
Absolutely. So, it is a language, actually, visual language.
Definitely. I guess my interest in art was, well, my mother worked in a toy store at one point, and she brought home watercolors, brought home clay, and I fashioned toy soldiers. I do some stuff, and I guess it piqued my interest. I mean, reading comic books and drawing comic book figures is how it all started. And
where did you grow up?
I was always intrigued with it. I was always trying to reproduce what was there, what was in comic books, and I think I was infatuated with scuba diving. I think some of my first pictures I drew was a man scuba diving with a tank on his back. I always thought it was something I always wanted to do that I've never done. But it was just.
What do you think the depth symbolized for you, Renaldo, at that time in your life? What was the depth of the sea? What was that for you?
Um, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. Okay.
It's hard to pin it down as to A, B, C, or D.
Sure.
But I remember, I think the first public work that I did was when I was in the third grade. The school I went to, the teacher brought a book of anatomy to school.
Oh,
And there was only one book.
Renaldo, I have a comment from our audience on Facebook. They're asking you if you can lean into the mic a little bit so we can hear you more.
They can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, they want to hear you a little bit
now?
more. Hi, everybody. Hi, Deb. Hi, Juanita. Bill Perkins. Tim Lovett.
Is that Deb Ewing? Bill Perkins.
Yep.
Yeah. We met in New York.
Hey, everybody. Great. It's wonderful to have you here. Quick question, Renaldo. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Panama. I was born in Panama.
Oh, that's important.
Right. I didn't mention that. I was born in Panama. We came to this country. Well, my mother and sister came to this country in 1960, 61. And like 2 years later, my two brothers and I arrived with my father. We lived with Hitler for a couple of years. And so,
What did you
so
just say?
My parents spoke English. Funny thing. My parents spoke English because they went to English school, but I understood English, but I didn't know how to read and write English. So when we came here, people laughed at me when I read. When I read in school, they laughed. But I thought I was a very good reader. I just simply had an accent. But
When did you come to the
I
United
lived in Panama
States?
until I was 10 years old.
10 years old.
And
Okay.
we came to this country.
Okay.
And my mother actually she was like the backbone of her family. My mother worked like 2 and 3 jobs to help send for us. She was like the first polymath, in our family. She could do everything. My mother was an artist. She sewed. She gave Panamanian dances where thousands of people showed up. She owned a dress shop in Los Angeles. And the funny thing, people from Beverly Hills that own boutique shops would come and buy clothes in the store
Yeah.
and at retail. And they will sell it like 10 times the price. Let me show you the quality of work that
Yeah.
my mother produced. My mother's like an amazing, as a matter of fact, 30 days from now, February the 12th, my mother's going to be 91 years old.
Oh my goodness. Where is she right now?
91. She lived in Los Angeles with my sister. Unfortunately, my mother these days suffers from Alzheimer's.
Sorry to hear that.
But like I said, my mother has been the pillar and the tower of our family, the backbone of our family since day one. Well, women are the pillars of society to begin with.
I'll go for that.
With women, well, I had a psychology teacher, and he always said, you know what? God couldn't possibly be a man. He said, God, today, a woman can have a child without a man. I mean, not artificial insemination, but they can trick the body into believing that the woman is pregnant, but she can only have a girl child. But a woman, I don't know, men, I guess came along after. The Adam and Eve story just never sat well not with me.
Yeah.
But anyway, the science has proven the point that woman came first. And without women, this society couldn't possibly exist. This could possibly exist. And then in fields that men normally excel in, things like combat, women have, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sendero Luminoso Force, but the Sendero Luminoso Force is an all-women's army in South America. The Shining Path.
Seriously? An all-women's army in Panama?
It's an all-woman force. Well, you see, women are greater fighters than men, and it has nothing to do with strength. It has to do with the ability, combat. I mean, I'm a known soldier from way back, Um, combat has to do with the ability to withstand pain, and women can withstand more pain than men. I mean, they're even in flying aircrafts, women outperform the men
Yeah.
in these these $1 million jet aircrafts all the time.
Amazing. Ronaldo,
Yes,
just a moment ago you were, and now you're singing the virtues of women, which is much appreciated. And you're talking about this in connection with your art because your mom at an early age for you fostered your creativity. Now I want to just touch upon your father because I remember you telling me that your father wasn't supportive of your artistic practice.
Yeah, well, my father was a very, very intelligent man. Matter of fact, my father came to this country on an intelligence visa. Let's give you an idea of where he was. I mean, my father read a lot of books. So, I mean, what does the child do? You emulate your parent. If your parent read a lot of books, then you grow up reading books. I mean, your father was a scholar. Your father was a poet, writer.
Yeah.
And you grew up watching your father read books. So you probably did the same thing I did. We emulate our environment.
But did you say something about how he cut up your artworks?
My father, he didn't think much of art, period. But he didn't cut it up. He just, when I left, he just threw away everything that I'd ever produced.
Wasn't it thousands of drawings and paintings?
It was thousands of negatives and photographs and painting. I mean, not thousands of paintings, but it was enough.
And it took you a long time to you actually worked on recreating what you had lost.
Yeah, it was very, very painful, but it's one of these things that we live with.
Yeah.
Some people are just they don't connect to art and they don't see the significance of what it means.
Did your father in his lifetime ever come to a closer understanding of what art was to you?
No, I don't think he ever had a close understanding with anyone. To tell the truth.
Okay.
Well, not with me.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes they say that sometimes two people that are so much alike they can't get along.
Yeah. Yeah. So Renaldo, I'm going to share the screen right now to show your artwork that we at Igneus have collected. You were kind enough to bestow upon us. I'm going to share that screen. And while it's showing, could you talk a little bit about this piece of art, how you make it, how you did the drawing, and so, okay, I think we're sharing now. We should be sharing.
This is the piece that that's dedicated to Peter Kidd. This is part of my three-dimensional breakdown of the human body. It took me something like almost 15 years to complete it. And what you see here is it was first titled Unfinished. And this was Peter's favorite piece.
So I'm not able to share the screen, so here it is.
Okay, no problem. This is Beer's favorite piece. That he looked at me one day. I showed it to him, and he said, "You know what? This is your signature piece." And when we met, I had a T-shirt made with it, and Sophia fell in love with the same piece that her father liked, which was great. But like I said, this is part of a series of like almost 1,700 drawings.
So what do you do? What is this all about? Where you cast the body in thousands of geometrical shapes? What's that?
Right. The entire body is broken. Well, it's a differential of two cubes. You take two cubes and you put together, and then you apply that to the human body, and that's what my work basically is. All of my art is based on this formula that I developed. As a matter of fact, well, it's more than drawing. It's actually buildable because it's drawn to scale. But not having millions of dollars, I am unable to finance the scale. So I turned it into art.
I love this piece of art. It makes me so very happy.
And colored it.
Great. So, Renaldo, I think it's time now in our in today's Igneus Live to turn to your discussion of your poetry and your literature. And you were talking to me yesterday about a book that you published in 1996 called Velvet Dreams. Here it is.
It is Velvet Dreams. It has 4 of my paintings in it. It has this is my copy, so it has actually painting. And these are a couple of the paintings that are in the book.
Oh, beautiful.
You can see that.
That's like the one you're...
Right.
Oh, that's gorgeous. You can see that...
And this one here.
Yo. Did they have a title?
Right. For these,
Yeah.
never had a title. Never had a title for them. Most of my work doesn't have titles. And I don't know. I never really had any intentions. I mean, here's another piece of it. I mean, this is one of the early paintings.
Oh, that's beautiful.
This is one of the early paintings.
Oh, yeah. I really like all of the negative space that you allowed the figures to inhabit. That's gorgeous.
And
So,
this is, I think this one, the ones in the book, the title of this one is In Search of.
In Search of.
This one is In Search
Oh,
of.
wow. You actually sold over 4,000 copies of this book, is that correct?
About a little over 3,000 copies.
Brilliant.
This particular one here, called Vision, I am actually repainting.
Ah,
I gave
yeah.
this one to a company to reproduce.
mm,
They told me they lost it.
mm.
It was one of the biggest prints. I saw painting. I saw prints on canvas of my work. This one in particular, they claimed they lost, and they offered me $2,500 for it, and I told them no. So then they upped it to $5,000, and I told them you can have 5,000 kicks, and that's basically where it ended up. And then today they're probably out of business. I refused the $5,000, but because to me it's more than $5,000. It was something that they took that belonged to me,
Yeah.
and money just doesn't replace it. It's impossible to replace my work, my soul with money. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't replace your soul.
Are you
But
kidding
you can
me?
always replace things with money, things that you can buy. They have no significant value. Like material things. I mean, your car crashed, you buy another car.
Well, you
get
can
insurance.
replace your soul, like put your soul in another place,
Oh yes.
but you
it's-
cannot.
But you can transmit or transform your soul. But,
Yeah.
but there's only one soul.
Yeah. And I don't even think you can destroy your soul. Never mind replace your soul.
Well, the soul is the soul is energy. Well, I have a friend that has a theory, and his theory is that we existed as spiritual beings before we
Yeah.
developed a physical body.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to mention, Renaldo, we do have a few comments that people are having a hard time hearing you. Could people tell me,
Really?
are
Can
you
they-
having a
can
hard
they-
time
can they
hearing
hear me
me
now?
or just Renaldo? Is it... They'll get back to us soon. There's a little bit of a delay. Fortunately, we do have it closed captioned on some of the platforms. So, yeah, some people are having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, so if you could just speak up a little
Just
bit.
me, really?
Yeah.
Is this any better?
People
I
will
can-
let me
I can
know.
move closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Does that help? Best in 1, 2, 3. You think?
Yeah. So they're having a little
Any
bit of a...
better? I thought with my voice that that'll be the last thing I'll ever hear is that you can't hear me.
Huh. I don't know if it's a matter if they can't hear you. It's just they can't hear you maybe as well
My
as they
voice
would.
is faint.
Let me see if I can hear you. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a matter if they
I can hear you.
You hear me?
This is Michelle.
Hello, Michelle. How you doing?
Hi. I didn't know I could unmute myself.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Renaldo. I'm listening to you on Facebook and I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're okay.
Are we
If you
good? Are we good?
yeah,
Well, this is the. I'm gonna read the short poem first
good,
from the book Velvet Dreams.
good.
It says, elections are like erections. They come and go. Democrats and Republicans running, bashing each other's chance. That I can rip poverty in one note, says one. That I can do it in a half a note, says the other. A potential voter yells, bet both of you just singing off key. You can't see. That's for
Nice.
my elections.
Can you read the intro?
Elections are like erections.
Oh, but remember the intro to the book where you were reading a little
Oh,
bit
the
of
intro to the book. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Then it talks a little bit about me. All right. I was born in the Republic of Panama. My family moved to the United States when I was 10 years old. Upon arriving, I discovered that no one understood my brand of English. So I embraced unlearning Americanics and the various dialects spoken in this land. After several years of school, I became fluent, enabling me to communicate with the natives. While visiting Panama in September 1988, and after 11 years of not writing any poetry, I decided to dust off what was left of my brain and churned up the old machinery. And with encouragement from my ex-wife, Carolyn, and my online friends, I conjured up these thoughts. This is the first book I've written. I've decided to practice the old art of book binding. What did I know about book binding? About as much as I knew about the English language when I came into this country, called Americanese. I hope you enjoyed this poem much as I enjoyed writing them.
And do you have another poem in there that you'd like to read to us?
I have another poem. This is the one
Cool.
after 26 years, I went back to Panama. And I left 3 months before the United States government started bombing.
Did you just say
Started
United
bombing people.
Snakes?
Pardon me?
Did you just say United Snakes?
The United States.
Oh. I thought I heard thought I heard some truth speaking. No, oh no.
Yeah, it's the United States. It's well, if you understand, well, those of us that know the country outside of living here have a different perspective. I mean, where I lived in Panama, the place, I could see I used to watch, when I was a kid, I saw troops come down from what they call Ankong Hill in the United States and shoot people, they shot students, just like that they shot students at Kent State and Jackson State. They did the same thing in the 60s. I watched this from my window as a kid. Them shooting people. I mean, there was an incident of like in '66 when I was already here, and they shot like almost like 29 students that were protesting. I mean, it happens. I mean, like, look what happened in the capital in this country. You know, there were some people that were dissatisfied. They weren't disenfranchised because they were the privileged class in the country. And what happened? They took the law into their own hands.
Yeah.
So this is a poem that I wrote after the invasion of Panama, and it's called Panama 1989 Infection. Skins melting, chemicals are burning. People running, yelling as they scream in the dark of the night. Even 100 degrees, 4 in the morning. House on fire, mothers searching in fiery hell, looking for children trapped in inferno. They came at midnight, searching, trapping, cutting, killing, all that stood in the path of evil desires. Not caring, scaring, burning innocent victims, they stood in line of fire hell. In the name of the red, white, and blue, commandos striking a blow for the lawless order across the border. In the name of demon crazy, I pronounce you dead as I take over your land once again. Trust my politician, he's godlike. He knows best. I'm just carrying out the death wishes of the rich and infamous. First, let me kill you to save you. Let me burn your children's eyes with chemicals. Or say, can you see? The gringos have turned off the light. Remember, I'm here to save you from the drug-infested Lord. We are in the name of the great demon crazy. Yes, so say, can you see? The gringos have turned off the lights. We're part of the war on drugs. Didn't they tell you? They're just in the way. We're gonna kill the bad guys today only.
Dang. That's some heavy poetry and well delivered, very well delivered. So for those who are just joining us, I'm noticing we've got lots of people here watching. Hi there to Kim and Tim and Liz, Eliz and Juanita. Thank you so much for spending the time with us that you did spend with us today. Michelino is watching us on YouTube, because we're also streaming on YouTube today. And Vicky Locke, Jerome Greer, Bill Perkins, thank you everybody so much for joining us here today. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them on to the comments, and any special requests. We've been talking about Renaldo Ricketts' art and his poetry practice, growing up in Panama, coming to the United States at the age of 10, having lots of support from his mother to paint, and a little bit of adversity from coming in from his dad in terms of being an artist.
And also, I wanted to mention that I actually come from a lineage of artists.
Let's talk about that.
Right. On my mother's side, I'm related to the painter named Edward Bannister. Matter of fact,
Edward Bannister.
Edward Bannister.
Okay.
Yeah, Edward Bannister was born in Canada, but his father was from Barbados. His father and my grandfather are related; they're cousins. And Edward Bannister's father came to Canada and married a woman in Nova Scotia. And both of them didn't live very long. They died early in age. And Edward Banister and his brother were adopted by this wealthy white family.
Mm.
He later came to this country and married a woman that owned a string of salons. He entered a contest with his art and won. But due to the color of his skin, they decided that they didn't want to give him the prize. But then the artists got together. The artists got together and said, no, art is supposed to be the element, is supposed to be the avenue of truth. And they gave him the prize. He went on, as a matter of fact, Edward Bannister was also an abolitionist in this country, and a good friend son of Frederick Douglass.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of people know Frederick Douglass,
Yep.
except for the President of the United States thought he was the guy that was alive today.
Could
But
you
he
tell
didn't
us
know who he
today,
was.
could you just talk a little bit about who Frederick Douglass is for those who aren't familiar?
Yeah, Frederick Douglass was just a genius, a genius that became part of the Underground Railroad. And if anybody in the United States that has not been exposed to Frederick Douglass, please, I don't think I can even explain Frederick Douglass and the genius of this work and his writing. The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass should be a must read for everybody in the world. And Frederick to me is one of like the most dynamic men that ever lived in the world. Coming from what he came from, he was born into slavery. He was born into slavery in this country and rose to great heights. You know, but there's a funny thing. One of the things in his book that he talked about that I saw. I mean, I drove from the United States back to Panama in 1988, and Frederick Douglass back like 100 years before that. He said that in every country, he went from here to Central South America. He said that in every country in Central America that he went to, he saw that black people were at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, and 100 years later, we were still at the bottom of the totem pole. You know, like, what has changed? Time has changed, technology has changed, but the mentality has remained. It hasn't changed. And to look at what we have today, we can legislate. I mean, I didn't know that. I had problems in Latin America, especially like in El Salvador. In El Salvador, believe it or not, in their constitution states that they don't want anybody black in the country.
Wow.
This is actually in their constitution. I already changed it, but see, changing laws don't change mentalities. I mean, laws are great. I mean, Brown versus the Board of Education over 50-something years ago, they changed that. Sure, they integrated schools, but today, 60 years later, today, 60%, no, 85% of black children in this country attend predominantly black schools. But you see, you can change these laws, but you see, they don't change the economics. Nothing changes because the economics, the dynamics remain the same because of the economics.
Right.
And this is the problem. This is the
Right.
problem that people have today. And then this goes back to Garvey, 100 years ago.
Renaldo, I just wanted to mention we got a comment from Michelino Angela. She said that the poem was amazing. Such irony. She really enjoyed it.
What's her name? Michelino?
Yep, she's actually my mom.
Michelino, thank you very much. I'm glad you like it.
And Elizabeth Gordon McKim said that Frederick Douglass lived in Lynn, Massachusetts for a while, which is where she's located.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
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 Well, a funny thing, Edward Bannister started a school in Massachusetts that's still open today.
An art school.
The design school.
An art school.
Right.
Yeah.
An art school, yeah.
Yeah.
School of Design, and from what I understand, it's still functioning today.
Very cool. Could you
And
talk a
he
little
became-
bit?
I mean, he funny.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit, because you mentioned El Salvador and some of the conflict that you ran into
Well,
there.
yeah, El Salvador, Latin America. I tell people, Latin America. I mean, if you think America is racist, you should try Latin America. I'm from Latin America. Latin America is more racist than this country. At least, I mean, there are things in this country that are not right, but you know, there are people that want to make a change. Right? I mean, we came to this country for a better life, and we developed a better life in this country. The
Yeah.
life that we lived here, we probably would not have had if we had stayed in Panama. I doubt it, but sure, there's no perfect country. America is not a perfect country. I don't hate America. I wish to change things in America.
Like what things?
I'm an activist because I want people to understand the plight of people that have been disenfranchised in this country. I want them to understand. A lot of people don't understand that because many of us live in this convoluted bubble that we never come out of. They don't understand the pain. They don't understand what it takes to survive when you're not a privileged, in the privileged class. They don't understand that. And I figure it's not my job, but I feel like it is my duty to educate you as to what is taking place.
So I understand that you spent some years in your life traveling throughout the world speaking about against fascist regimes. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was in El Salvador, Nicaragua. I was there after the war. I was here right during the war, but most of the war was the war had pretty much wound down in '88 in Nicaragua. But El Salvador, I drove back, and the war was still going on in El Salvador. I mean, El Salvador. I mean, they told me that my passport was fake. El Salvador. A guy that's looking at my passport sideways told me my passport was fake. I said, I guess you're going to have to kill me. I was just kidding, right? He said, yeah. Anyway, they marched me down the streets in El Salvador. This is the country that don't allow black people to come in. They have it in their constitution. They don't want you in. And they marched me down the street, and the guy hit me in my head with a rifle.
Jesus
I'm bleeding.
Oh my
I'm
God.
bleeding from my head, and they think it's funny. But they marched me to the sergeant. The sergeant looks at me, and like, what's the problem? What's the problem? Well, they gave me a yellow toilet paper to stop the bleeding. I mean, it took me I lost so much blood. It's a good thing in Latin America you can buy antibiotics over the counter. I went to a restaurant, gave people the money, and they went and bought the antibiotics because I was afraid of my head getting infected and dying. But this is El Salvador for you. I mean, they're brutal. I mean, some of the things I saw in El Salvador brings nightmares. I mean, they shot people. I mean, I saw them. They shot people and piled them up in the streets in El Salvador. And the people they suspect are communists, what they call insurgents. They shot them. They were alive, and they just piled them up. They poured gasoline on them and set them on fire. I mean, it was horrific. I mean, you hear screams. There was a wall of fire of people screaming that were still alive that they killed. I mean, the places, they have what they call their death squads. I mean, it's real. I met a guy one day in San Mateo, and he told me that one day they came to his house. One day they came to his house, and there was some report talking about he was a communist or whatever. His friend came running, said, no, he's not a communist, And the good thing, his friend knew the sergeant that was ordered to kill him. And what he did the following day, he bought a bus ticket to Mexico and hightailed it out there, was able to call it an insurrection. I will call it an insurrection if they had a chance in hell of succeeding. I mean, they rebelled against something that they shouldn't have been rebelling against. So I won't call it insurrection. I mean, you look at Deb wrote a piece about Argentina. There are 40,000 people missing in Argentina. You know, there are 40,000 people missing in this country. In Brazil, there are over 40,000 missing. I mean, I've been to Brazil. I was in Brazil for the World Cup. It was just weird. I'm walking down the street in Brazil, Copacabana, and a boy said, aren't you from San Francisco? I'm like, wait a minute. And it was a comedian that I know that had gone to the World Cup. It was weird. I've heard stories like this, but it actually happened to me. It's just strange to be 5,000 miles away from home. You run into somebody that you know. It's just stuff now. But Latin America has a long ways to go. A long ways to go. If you want to know why people are leaving Latin America, because these are regimes. I mean, in El Salvador, I saw There were soldiers that were 12, 13 years old. There were children with M16s. And we know where M16s come from. There were soldiers with M16 and they were just kids. They pay them $5, $10 a month to kill people. Children that should be learning in school. And they're running around with M16s killing people. But the death squads are real and they're still there. They're still there. I mean, it's when you see the world. I mean, in Europe. I mean, the Indonesian took over Papua, and I went to Holland, and I spoke in Holland about with the revolutionary movement that they have in Holland, and the Papuans how they've been how they're abused in their own land. Well, they found gold. So the Indonesians took over their land and their gold, and now they're practically, I mean, they're like fourth-class citizens in their own country. I mean, I've
Which country are you talking about right now? You're talking about
this was Papua.
Papua. Okay, Papua.
Right.
Okay.
And well, they were ruled by the Australians, and they were from the Australian to the Indonesian. The Australian controlled the Indonesian, and they controlled the Papua.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've spoken in a few countries in Latin America, Brazil,
Yeah.
Salvador, Panama, and Dublin, Germany, Holland. So
Oh, amazing.
ventured around.
Did you buy your own airfares and do all this traveling, or were they flying you out there to speak?
I had some assistance sometimes, but most of it was all on my own.
Okay. Well, I have another question for you, kind of a doozy of a one, and it's going to bring us back to where we began at the beginning of our live session today, when
Okay,
we were
carry
talking
away.
about art. So,
Right.
because you're talking about activism, and you're talking about all of these quote unquote, we all know who I'm quoting, but these shithole nations, right? Like, where it's just you can't even. It's chaos, and there's slaughter and brutality, and there's no law and order. So there's this kind of social, political, and economic unease in the world. How can you rationalize spending? How can an artist rationalize spending one's time with colors and paint and form and canvas when there's so much activism, there's so much social intervention to engage in, and so much change to be a part of? Like, how can you take time to do art when there's so much to do in the real world?
Well, this is the power of art. You see, art is like the gasoline to what is going on. You see, art sends, for example, let's say a picture is worth 1,000,000 words, and this is what art does. So we're working on canvas, and we're working on these things, and it's not intrusive, but what it does is that we show the world. Like I tell people, revolutions begin in cafes with artists and poets, and this is where it starts. It starts with art. Changes all start with art. It starts with poets. It starts with artists. It starts with singers. It starts with musicians. These are the people that are dissatisfied, that speak in their mind. So it's short. It's passive, but it's powerful.
Is this because art is an avenue for truth, as you mentioned earlier today?
Yeah, it is. It is an avenue for truth and correctness, just like what happened to Edward Bannister. The artists got together and said, "Wait a minute, you're denying the price of man because of the melanin content of his skin." I mean, where is the logic? There is no logic. So this is what makes art truth. There is no logic. There is no logic to discrimination. I mean, the difference between people, I mean, pigmentation and these things are due to adaptation to environment. So we simply evolved from the environment that we came from. It really is that simple. It's not complex. But then people develop these psychoses as to color and with disinformation and exploitation and all these things that they put together and stereotype people and I mean, they do the same thing. They do the same thing. Decide to do the same thing to women. Like, how can you? You can't do this. You're a woman. You're this. You're that. And which is false.
Yeah.
Which is false. In the 1940s, said, well, you know what? Can black people fly planes? You know, in the 1940s, said, well, can black people play basketball? Well, if you give me the opportunity to play, you know, I could probably play. You know, but if people are given opportunity, they can do anything. I mean, if you needed a heart, if you needed a kidney, and they brought a kidney to you, you wouldn't say, well, who's the kidney from? Somebody white, somebody black, somebody Latin, somebody from the Middle East. You wouldn't ask where the kidney came from. You would take that kidney because this will save your life. Our parts and our organs are interchangeable.
Except for blood type.
Interchangeable.
You got to make sure that the blood type and the antigens or something like that.
Yeah, but there's still there has to be a match.
Yeah.
There has to be a match, but they're all interchangeable.
Yeah. Well, Renaldo, it looks like we have 7 or 8 minutes left here today. I want to take this moment just for anybody who's joining last minute. I'm Sophia Kidd. I'm the publisher of Igneus Press, and I'm here today with Renaldo Ricketts, who is a good friend of my father, Peter Kidd, founding publisher of Igneus Press. With Renaldo, we're talking about Renaldo's art, his poetry, and his activism. And I was hoping, Renaldo, that we could kind of wind things up today, revisiting how you met Dad, and in a forum called the Authors Lounge. Could you talk a little bit about? I think a lot of people here today are from the Authors Lounge.
So. Oh yeah, but I know Deb Ewing and the public and Perkins. As a matter of fact, I met him in New York at the gathering that was kind of must be almost about 8-9 years ago. Yeah, it was a very unique room on AOL. Back in those days, I think everybody was on AOL. That was the mass media. That was the place to be.
Was this the late 90s? The 90s or?
I came in 96, but that's the year I think 95, 96.
Yeah. And
the room was fascinating. I mean, some of the people, some of them are well known, but it didn't matter, because when you came into that, it was like a lion's den. When you came in, when you came in there, you had to be prepared. I mean,
really?
Some of these people were like monster intellectuals.
Oh my God.
Some of them spent their entire life just reading under a book, you know, by candlelight, and there were subjects that, I mean, they discussed everything, you know, politics, sex, name it, and there were strong, opinionated people that was in the room. I mean, it was good. I mean, I learned a lot, and we exchanged ideas, and we cussed each other out, and
yeah, I hear there was a little bit of drama.
It was just life. People were like a family.
Yeah, and I hear you ran into some issues, and there was some drama that kind of revolved around you at times.
Well, there was always. I think I was always around drama.
and Dad would speak for you. He would be sort of.
He was, you know, that's what I loved about Peter. Peter will he will stand up when he felt I was right. He will stand up, even against the people that he was close to. And to me, that's what made him remarkable. Is that he stood his ground. He stood for truth. I mean, he was a true artist. A true artist stands for truth. And because truth is the only thing that we want in life.
And I have to just.
You need truth. If you have truth, you have justice. So if you stand for truth, you stand for justice automatically. And Peter stood for justice. You know, he stood for the truth. I mean, the people that he associated with. I mean, people like Kaufman and Abby Hoffman. I mean, how do you even contain somebody like that?
And Vincent Farini, that was
Beer he had this quality. He could like tame a lion.
yeah, yeah,
He looked at things in depth. He didn't look at the periphery. He never went with the public opinion of what they thought somebody was. I mean, there are a lot of people that will gang someone, and Rebel said no. I mean, he looked at things in depth, and that's where my respect for him came.
yeah.
That's why you have that painting today.
I know. I'm so happy to have it.
See, he laid that foundation, and that is what I respect. And this is my way of showing respect. But he laid that foundation of honesty and truth. You know,
Yeah.
he stood for human rights. See,
Thank you for saying that.
Human rights.
And
You know,
Deb
not a
Ewing,
small scale, but that's what it is.
yeah. Deb Ewing just commented that Pete would remain his own voice of reason at all times.
Always. He was. You know, if Beer said something, he believed it. He believed it, and he will always line up behind truth.
Now
I have never seen him align himself with something that was popular, or someone that was popular, or someone he knew.
yeah.
There are people that he knew that he disagreed with.
Mm.
I saw people turn on him.
You did.
And were supposed to be close to him.
Mm.
One day he was almost in tears. Hey, I'm like, man, I'm sorry. And this is because he stood up for me. And they turned on him. Like I said, the room had a lot of very vicious people, and they turned on him.
Wow.
And I felt bad because they
Wow.
did that.
So how did that all resolve?
Eventually, I mean, I told him I was sorry that what had happened, but I guess eventually, I mean, it worked its way eventually it dissolved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You know,
amazing that
eventually it dissolved.
that's good.
But this is why he is loved by so many, and this is why we talk about him. I mean, who didn't love Beer? Everybody
Yeah.
loved Beer.
For those who don't know, Dad's Peter Kidd's nickname was Ig Bear. Ig Bear. IG for Igneus and Bear, the bear, because Dad was a landscape contractor in New England, and during 4 or 5 months of the year the ground would be frozen, so he wouldn't be able to run his crew, and so he would take the winters off and hibernate like a bear hibernates. So that's where he got that name. Renaldo, I have one more question for you today. It kind of a little bit of it stood up for me. It stood out to me just now. You were talking about truth, about how you and artists or my dad would stand up for truth, and that there was truth and there was justice. Now we all know that different people have different truths, and sometimes, like, a fascist will kill 99 people because he believes he has the one truth. So how can you reconcile the changing nature of truth with the way you're using it as an absolute? Like, how do you work that out?
It's, I don't think that there's not my truth and your truth. It's just like the lady from the administration said, well, there are alternative facts. My truth and your truth, that's the same as saying there are alternative facts. There is no such thing as an alternative fact. That is impossible to have. There isn't my truth and it isn't your truth. That's like having an alternative fact. You cannot have an alternative fact. It is a fact or it's not.
So you think there's an absolute truth?
Right, there's an absolute truth. I mean, either you have disinformation or misinformation, but there's no such thing as an alternative fact. That is ridiculousness.
Okay.
You cannot have an alternative fact. It is either a fact or it's not. I mean, that's what I love about science. And what I like about science is is that you have to prove your point. And if you prove your point, then that is the truth. That is the truth as we understand it. And when you prove your point.
Yeah. I just got a
Okay.
okay, all right. Well, we can maybe, that I think that would be a subject for another discussion one day. It's just the ephemeral nature.
Maybe we should do a series.
Yeah, on truth. On 3. 1, 2.
What is truth? There's not my truth, your truth, and your truth, and well, everybody's armed with the truth. Yeah.
Okay. You believe there's a universal truth, a perennial truth that is always true. But it changes.
Exactly. Right.
Doesn't. Okay. All right. Right. Well, we'll leave that for another day.
Well, we can go on for a couple of hours.
I know. And
Yeah,
so
we're going to touch on Garvey for a second. I don't think we covered it well. Anyway, what I want to, my activism comes through my family. I mean, my family was, my father's side. We were, they were in the movement in Panama. As you know, the Garvey movement had like 7 to 8 million people worldwide in like 49 different countries, and it's been 100 years, and there's still chapters that are around. And his formula for equality, well, I haven't seen a formula or a program for equality that even comes close to what he did 100 years ago. Because he believed he believed in building your own and fortifying yourself. I mean, like, integration sounds fine, but integration does not really empower you. What you want to you want to empower. I mean, sure, you go into a restaurant, you go into this and that, but you want to own the restaurant. What you want to do. You want to control your destiny, and you cannot control your destiny unless you own it. And this is why the Garvey movement, after 100 years, is still a powerful movement.
Ah, you're talking about Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican activist, who you are related to.
Yeah, I'm a descendant of Marcus Garvey. My great-grandmother, Marcus Garvey, lived with my great-grandmother when he was in Panama. Marcus Garvey organized the workers that worked in these banana plantations in Panama and Boca Santora. He organized workers. I mean, my grandfathers both worked for 10 cents an hour in the construction of the canal. Imagine having 8 children making 10 cents an hour. Well, they paid the black people in Panama, the United States government paid them in silver, and they paid the whites in gold. They paid them 10 cents an hour. So it was like starvation wages. It was, they starved. I remember my mother telling me that my grandmother would tell her, hurry up and go to bed before you get hungry. There were no midnight snacks.
I hear you. So that's where your activism comes from.
So this is the abuse that takes place in the world. This is the abuse of people and culture that I fight against.
Right. Well, thank you for your fight. Thank you for your fire, Renaldo. Thank you for your art, your beautiful artwork. I see you're wearing a T-shirt with one of your pieces on today.
Yeah, this is one of, I have been named.
And so anybody who's watching who's interested in Renaldo Ricketts' artwork, Renaldo can be found.
I sell prints on canvas.
Just PM him.
You can Google my name and you can see there's tons of it there. If you're on Facebook, you probably I've seen got maybe 50, 60 pieces.
Sure, so people could reach out to you on Facebook.
People can reach out to me. You can Google my name. My phone number shows up. You can call me.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Renaldo, I think
you can call me. We can work out prices or whatever it is. We can work. Everything can be worked out.
Good. Well, I want to thank you very, very much for being here today with me, for being my friend, for being my father's friend, for sharing your artwork, your poetry, and your passion for activism with our audiences today on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch TV, here on Zoom. Thank you so much for those who joined our Zoom meeting today. Had you just a little bit closer to us. Thank you so much, Renaldo.
It was my pleasure and honor to be here. I've been waiting for this. I had a good time. How about you?
I had an excellent time. And I hear you have, you recently, today or yesterday, you were offered a speaking engagement.
Right. Yeah. Kind of,
So cool.
The Detroit Institute of Art. If I will lecture there.
That's
Sure.
wonderful.
No problem.
That's the
I
way
think
it should be.
Roger said he was going to tune in. I don't know. I didn't see his name. But anyway, Roger, if you're watching, I accept.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Renaldo, and I'll see you around.
My pleasure, Safia.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Thank you so much for joining in and for commenting and supporting Igneus. And buy books. Books are good.
Definitely. We have to keep the lights on, right?
Yeah, we got to keep the lights on. These lights. These lights.
And,
This is not real gold.
Please buy books from Igneus Press. We need it. We
Yeah,
need
we
it.
do.
We cannot ride in darkness.
That's right. All right.
Peace.
Peace. Blessings. Thank you.
Bless you.